Well, thank you all for coming out. This is the 107th time that LRH has had a annual community meeting, and so I always admire everybody coming out, particularly on a night like this where it hurts a little bit as you stand outside. For those of you I don't know, I'm Steve Truboff. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees of LRH this year. I think you all know Warren West, our CEO and president. And our goal tonight is to share information both about what we're doing today, many of you are engaged and involved in that, and a little bit about the environment we're operating in and seeing ourselves operating in and where we think we're going. One of the interesting questions people ask me all the time is, who owns this place? I'm always shocked people ask that question. This is a community-owned hospital. You own this place. This is a classic 501c3 nonprofit, non-government, mission-driven organization in which whatever money we make is reinvested in the institution itself for the betterment of the community. And governance is by a board of trustees elected actually by the Board of Trustees for a term of up to 10 years. And we've changed that around a little bit, but roughly people are on 10-year terms, although we have some people that have served longer than that. And before we get started talking about the hospital tonight, I want to recognize one of those who's coming off the board, and that's George Broder. You got to come up here, George. You're not going to let you hide back there. You get paid very well for being a trustee. In fact, your salary doubles every year. 2 times 0, you can figure out how it works. George, I'm going to let Warren talk about more of the details, but I've been on the board for a number of years with George when George was a member, when George was the chair, when George came back on the board, and actually, I don't know whether you were on the board and building the building at the same time. 50-50. 50-50, right? George was also the construction manager for the medical office building, which came in under budget and on time, which is a rare commodity in any kind of building. So Warren, why don't you say a few words and make the presentation?
Super. So George has been with this institution now for about a decade and a half, serving us in various capacities. Came on board in '97. And if those of you who think about our history, give or take 97, 98 is when the institution was thinking about a new hospital. And George came on board just about that time and worked with leadership, and I know he was in the room when they made that very controversial decision to facilitate a new building here in town. And I know that was a little challenge for the board. I think it was an 8-5 vote, something I certainly wouldn't want to have to walk away from. But thank God they made that decision, because this is what we have today. And it was probably the best decision that board made at the time. Through the years, though, George has certainly been in a leadership role and had some challenges. Right after they built the new building, there was a couple of challenges associated there with the contractor and getting the job done right, and George was instrumental in helping the institution get through those challenges and get the building fixed. Soon thereafter, if I'm not mistaken, the institution started having some major financial challenges, and George and the leadership team of the board helped through those challenges. I think George has seen 2 CEO changeovers here that were challenging to the organization. So George was on the board from '97 to 2006, at which time he came off the board and became an owner's rep as we built what I like to call the house that George built, our new medical office building. And then on 2010, he came back onto the board and has served us very well for the last 4 years. So this man has been instrumental in what we have here today, and I want to thank him very much for his leadership. Thank you. And as always, our tradition is your chair, sir.
Oh. Excellent.
I knew you'd like that. Thank you, George.
I'm going to take it over there.
You can take it. It's yours. For those of you that are in the back, there are a couple of chairs available, front row, if you're interested. No, huh?
You're in the LRH fitness program. If you stand for the full hour, you get to eat twice as much afterward. I always like to think that we run a good healthcare facility and fabulous food. So the reward here is we'll be done within an hour, and then we'll move into the reception next door. Dr. John Stouter is the chairman of the LRH Foundation and is going to give us a report on the charitable foundation and its success this year. John?
This is the 10th year of the Charitable Foundation, which has been set up to raise funds to support programs of the hospital. This is in addition to the operations budget and in addition to the investments, and it's been very successful. The foundation recently was expanded, so now Gail Clark has help. Susan Durkee, would you please stand up, Susan, so people can see who you are. Susan's our new development director. And she's going to be in charge of capital campaigns, long-term giving, and Gail's going to remain with us in terms of events and public relations. The events that were taking place this year included the golf tournament. The golf tournament was successful again, raising almost $21,000 for the paramedic intercept program, which is not paid for entirely by patients. It's actually paid for by the hospital, and this is helpful to raise the funds for that. We also had a women's health seminar again, and this year we partnered with the North Country Health Consortium. We had education credits available for nursing, and we had a full house. There were 400 people attending. We had no more room. If you want to sign up this year, please get your things in early. It's the day after Mother's Day, and it's been very educational for years. May 12th is the day for your calendar. We also have been having a monthly luncheon program with some of the donors and some of the community representatives. It's been very helpful. Members of the board and Warren have been happy to be at those meetings. In 2013, we'll talk about fundraising for a minute. In 2013, there were 319 individuals and businesses who made generous donations and sponsored or participated in the special events. They either established memorial funds, honor funds, or gave money, and we raised $211,154 from that. 115 of these were new donors. 319 sounds like a lot, but remember, we're in a catchment area of 25,000 people, so we have some room to improve, and I assume all of you here in the room have been part of that 319 this year. We also send out newsletters and websites, which, along with our annual appeal, raises money as well. And we also have been getting memorial gifts. I think if you look in your program, you'll see a number of the memorial gifts. More people are using them to honor people who've passed away, but there also are some in honor of gifts. This year we had one in honor of gifts for Cassandra Sakin, but we had memorial gifts for G. Stanley Bean, Dorothy Boisvert, Marie Campbell, Lucille Chamberlain, Carrie Diebler, Lisa Dunlop, Lenora Emery, Jewel Fogg, Conrad Fournier, Marion Gilbert, Frank Griffin, Sydney Ann Harris, Lon Howard, Alexander Kopp, Ruth LaRose, Florence LaSalle, Stella LeDuc, Harry McDade, Diane McDermott, Marjorie Miller Wells, Ronald Morris, Alice Nelson, Louis Sanborn, Joyce Schuster Tyler, Loretta Silver, Charles Sturr, F. Maynard Sunman, C. David Toll, Joyce Tyler, Ella Warren, and Donald Wright. I want to thank people who donated those monies. The total of our investment increase this year was $93,552. And our total at the end of the year was $1.2 million, $1.261013. The hospital has used this money to support various programs. This year we added to the paramedic intercept program, the Gill Medical Library with the Born to Read and Reach Out and Read programs for healthcare literacy. The Agnes Norris Birthing Center had Halo sleep sacks, which are basically a bundling blanket given to each of the newborns. We had nutrition matching in memory of Ruth LaRose to assist LRH staff in need of financial assistance, and we had a helmet safety program. We have capital campaigns as well. This year, our foundation's capital project was the Campaign for Hope for the Oncology Suite. The capital campaign was to raise $75,000, and we're this close to making the $75,000. Probably by next week, we'll have the $75,000, which is very, very good. We had some major donors, and there are plaques up in the area up there. You can take a tour of that area as well after this meeting. From White Mountain Footwear, including the Connors family, Dr. Harlan and Diana Herr, Dr. Randolph and Grace Wells Knight in memory of Marjorie Miller Wells, and John and Maggie Starr. Our new anticipated project will be the support of the planned renovation of the Agnes Norris Birthing Center with new larger rooms to accommodate the patients in labor and after delivery without crowding of visitors and family. We hope you'll support our new fundraising effort when we get it off the ground. Legacy, there's a long history of people making commitments in their wills and estate plans to support Littleton Regional Healthcare and its services. And we'll be continuing to push for a legacy society where people can join by designating LRH in their estate planning and informing us of their intentions. This will serve to encourage others to do the same. Our endowment funds, we still have our LRH 2000 Capital Fund, but in addition we have some specific endowment funds, the H. Taylor Caswell Fund, the Paul J. McGoldrick Family Fund, the Honorable Judge Peter Smith Fund, and the Fran Heald Endowment, which presently is supporting the volunteer program with Holly Lakey's alternative medicine program, which has been very successful. Finally, I'd like to thank those who are serving on the board, Gail Clark and Susan Durkee, Steve Truboff, John Starr, Ashley Garrison, Gil Vickery, Warren West, Nick Braccino, Bob Whitney, and Wayne Rio. This year we had an increased participation from the Hospital Board of Trustees, and we thank them for that, and thank you all for your support.
Next report is the auxiliary report. Everett Aldrich, President of the Auxiliary.
Good evening. Following a 100-plus year tradition, this is the annual report of the Littleton Regional Healthcare Auxiliary. Throughout the long history of the auxiliary, the caring and sharing of people, resources, and ideas has contributed to the betterment of the hospital, the community, and the quality of services. Each year provides the auxiliary with new challenges. Each year provides the auxiliary with new challenges of, of fundraising and supporting the LRH and the auxiliary mission. 2012-2013 was a very good year for all. The auxiliary is very sound financially, with assets of about $140,000, a very strong board of directors, and an incredible membership. We faced the challenges of a new year. It was a year of change. With new officers, new ideas, and recharged energies, we moved forward into a new era for the auxiliary. Our first major change was communication. Under the watchful eye of First Vice President Cindy Mitchell, the newsletter was produced and distributed via email. These newsletters help keep all of our membership better informed and more current on our activities. We expanded distribution to include Littleton Regional Hospital employees, volunteers, and the administrative staff. A few auxiliary members who are not electronically connected still receive newsletters the old-fashioned way via the mail. This whole process was facilitated with the cooperation of Gail Clark and the Community Relations Department. Gail joined the Auxiliary Board of Directors this past fall as publicity chairman, and will expand distribution and will continue to upgrade the quality of our newsletter. We will expand the distribution to medical offices and fellow auxiliary presidents through the New Hampshire Association of Hospital Auxiliaries. Although the board continues to meet monthly, we also use email to conduct business on a regular basis. Electronics have also opened up a whole new world of reminders, event postings, and sharing of ideas. Last year, I reported that that the auxiliary had rewritten their bylaws. As a follow-up to that process, the bylaw committee felt that in this period of changes, it would be helpful to create a working guide for all board officers and committee chairpersons. Much hard work and many rewrites, we now have completed this process. This guide provides history, contacts, agendas, avenues of reporting, and suggestions for improvement. It was a long and very difficult task to pull all of this information together, but the result hopefully will clearly define tasks as well as aid in recruitment of future officers and chairpersons. Many thanks to Joni Perel for all that coordinating and the typing. There are master copies with the presiding officer and secretary and mini packets for all officers and chairpersons. Our mission to educate was facilitated with the presentation of 2 open meetings for membership and the public. The first was an open forum discussion of the New Hampshire legislature presented by Representative Rebecca Brown. This informal event was well attended, full of useful information, and certainly eye-opening to all who were there. Our second event was held in conjunction with the Connors Medical Resource Library and funded in part with a gift from the Connors family. The presentation on ticks proved to be a lot of fun, very informative, and also well attended. The entire program was rebroadcast on Channel 2 several times for those of us who were unable to attend. This televised edition proved its worth through the very positive feedback received following broadcasts. In support of the future of healthcare, the auxiliary has a very active scholarship program. This past year, we tried a new approach to the presentation of these scholarships with an open house. All recipients and their families were invited to a reception hosted by the auxiliary and were introduced and presented with monies to support their continued education. 8 high school seniors and 2 hospital employees received a total of $10,000 in scholarship funds. This was a very positive way for all of us to meet. Many thanks go to Marion Edmonds and her committee for their hard work and the great evening. Joni Perel, Kay Lufgren, and anyone they can recruit spent countless hours weeding, pruning, planting, deadheading as part of the maintenance of the hospital grounds. This was evident at the Garden of Memories event held in May. This program has replaced the Tree of Lights previously held in the very busy month of December. With record attendance and a very meaningful program, many got to reflect and remember past loved ones and life's triumphs. This program will continue with its Green Memorial theme in the future. Many thanks, Mary Jane Merritt. We thank Mary Jane Merritt and her committee for such a fitting tribute. In support of the hospital staff, the auxiliary provided ice cream and all the Sunday makings at the annual employee barbecue. Our doctors are treated by the cafeteria and waited upon by the auxiliary members at our annual Doctor's Day breakfast. With a lavish menu, the docs have an opportunity to relax and enjoy friendly service and a delicious breakfast in recognition of their contributions. Each December sees the hospital transition into a Christmas wonderland, and this past year was no exception. Under the watchful eye of Sandy Monroe and her team, magic happens everywhere. A more subtle service is provided to our patients, with the auxiliary providing sweatsuits for patients who are in need of clean attire following accidents or procedures. This program has expanded to include some of the outpatient procedure areas because of need. Our efforts were noted with a generous donation and a thank you from a recipient of these services. In more public ways, the auxiliary supports and coordinates with the hospital volunteer program. This 200-plus powerhouse presence at the hospital is invaluable. By contributing over 10,000 hours of volunteer services, these men and women are an irreplaceable asset to Littleton Regional Hospital. A sincere thanks to each one of you for all you do and continue to do. Another huge project supported by the auxiliary is the Caravan program. This valuable contribution to the community provides transport for many who would otherwise have no means to get to appointments, secure prescriptions, or get to the hospital for scheduled procedures. If Gail Clark would come forward at this time. Gail, on behalf of the Littleton Regional Hospital Auxiliary, I'd like to present you with this check for $10,000 in support of the Littleton Caravan Program and its future.
Thank you.
Thank you. It must be obvious at this time that all of the projects must get paid for. Consuming lots of long hours, headaches, and arm twisting is the fundraising task of the auxiliary. Our largest and most profitable fundraiser is the Moose Ledge Gift Shop and its partner, the medical office building, Little Moose Kiosk. Under the most able management of Maggie Starr and her volunteers, this very time-consuming project has contributed greatly to the assets of the auxiliary. Also contributing this past year was the very successful quilt raffle and Marion Edmonds' forever popular Christmas cookie sale. Thank you to all who contributed to these fundraisers and in doing so, continue to support the auxiliary's many projects. All organizations face difficulties in increasing or maintaining membership. The auxiliary is no exception. Having lost six very hardworking members to the great auxiliary above, the membership chairman in Kathy Lewis, presented a proposal to adapt membership dues to include couples and recognize long-term memberships. The auxiliary board adopted those proposals and will actively campaign to increase our membership rolls in 2004. Might be noted we have 100 members at the moment. Most notable of those passing was Jewel Fogg, who dedicated over 30 years to the hospital and the auxiliary. She is credited with reorganization of the volunteer program as we know it today. In her memory, her family gifted to the auxiliary and volunteers a portion of her special collection of bone china teacups. These teacups have and will continue to be used in her memory, as well as displayed appropriately in the gift shop area. Thank you to the Fogg family. In conclusion, I'd like to say that this past year has been a true challenge, but with strong support of the hospital family, a very active auxiliary membership, and continued community support, what started out to be a year of change has rewarded us with true success. If you're impressed with the programs, projects, and accomplishments of the auxiliary, I ask you to consider joining us in the adventure that we face in the coming year. Many hands make light work, and lots of new friends, not to mention great personal satisfaction. Thank you.
We're going to take a moment now and talk about hospital finances. Bill Bedore, our Vice Chairman and Treasurer.
Thank you. There you go. Yep. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. It's good to see everybody here in their shorts and sundresses and Hawaiian shirts. You know it's cold in the North Country when half the people in the room, most of whom are probably locals in one way or another, keep their coats on after they come inside. So we appreciate you all coming out and braving the cold. I'm going to tell a story tonight. I don't want to bore you all with numbers. Some of these numbers are in the annual report that you see in front of you. A lot of them are available online. What I'd really like to do is to tell a story with these numbers tonight. It's a story of success. It's a story of growth. It's a story of community involvement, and we're very excited to be able to present it to you tonight. I'm going to run through them as quickly as I can, but just hit a couple of major points here. So we're talking about fiscal year 2013. So that's the fiscal year for us ending September 30th, 2013, just a couple of months ago. As Steve said, last year, I believe, the real revenue, important revenue number, the real number is the net revenue. I've got a slide a little bit later on that shows you the growth in that revenue. We have a healthy operating margin here. We're very fortunate for that. It's about 3% of our net revenue. We'd certainly like to see it be more, but we work very hard to make sure that there's enough money left over to invest in the community and invest in facilities and other assets. Again, as with the gross revenue number, the total margin number is a little bit illusory. It includes things like unrealized gains on investments and interest rate swaps and things of that sort that mean very little to most of us unless you're an auditor or CPA. Total assets, almost 100 million. About 55 or 60% of that are the physical assets of the plant, the building, the MRIs, the computers, the technology, and the other 40 or 45% relates primarily to current assets, things like our checking accounts, our investments, our receivables, et cetera. You can see the patient visits here. Obviously, those patient visits, that's not 115,000 individuals, that's patient visits. And physicians practicing, that number continues to go up. We've got a slide a little bit later on that shows you the growth in that number. Of course, LRH is one of the largest employers in the North Country. I mean, that's one of the benefits that we provide to the North Country, and we're very proud to be able to do that. At any given time in 2013, you can see we had about 450 people floating around, part-time, full-time, and per diem. And then this last number is one that I love. It's the total community benefit expense. And I actually noticed, just to go quickly off of my script, that in your annual report on page 3, there's a different number in there than that. And so I want to address it because at least one person would catch me on that, I'm sure. Both numbers are actually accurate, okay? And so the reality is the total community benefit expense is much more than just the free or reduced health care that we provide to community members in need. So just to address that, make sure we're clear, that number is very specifically calculated under a very specific formula. And so I just happened to notice that and wanted to point it out for everybody. So just to move on to a couple other things, here we see about a 30% increase in revenue, net and gross revenue, since 2009. Of course, that relates to the patients served. You can see a little dip in 2011, of course, but very good growth after that. One of the reasons we changed our name from Littleton Regional Hospital to Littleton Regional Healthcare is the fact that the traditional hospital services like inpatient, you can see, are only about 2% of our total visits. Interestingly enough, it seems like our emergency room visits never change. I'm not sure what that means or exactly what the situation is with that. But outpatient and clinic services, as you can see, continue to increase, and certainly that's a trend that we expect to see in the future. We're very fortunate to have an amazing physician staff. Warren and his team have done a great job recruiting over the last 7 years since he came on board, and you can see that growth here. Of course, there's been just a little drop in 2013. That really relates to a few retirements. And so we continue to have an amazing physician staff, an amazing nursing staff, technical staff, volunteers. We're very fortunate to have the people that we do have here at LRH. I switched this slide around a little bit just this morning because logically, at least in my CPA's mind, should have come after the revenue slide. But this is the slide showing our basketball-like operating margin over the last 5 years. And the reason I put it second to last here was very simple, really. It's that, unfortunately, healthcare is a very challenging business. And this reflects that fact. And it's only getting more challenging. You see it in the news every day. And so we bounce around. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that a lot of these things we just don't control very well. Warren and his team do a fabulous job of controlling expenses, keeping things operating well, but the reality is that it's up and down. The other reality is that even in a very challenging business, we're fortunate to be very, very solid. And Warren and Steve are both going to talk about some of the challenges that we're going to see in the next few years. But at the same time, I think we look at those challenges as opportunities. And LRH is in a great position to take those challenges and make them into opportunities. So with that, I think I'm going to leave it up to Steve next, and we'll move on. Thank you.
Got a lot of paper left over up here. Warren and I are going to talk a little bit about the environment we're working in. It's easy to sort of lose sight in the day-to-day of what we're doing to try to get some framework. You don't have to read a lot of newspapers or magazines to know that healthcare is a huge topic in America, and we're not, even though we're out in the country, we're very much a part of the challenges of that system. Give or take, depending on who's counting, healthcare represents 5% of the GDP. You all remember from your first course in economics, that's the gross domestic product, or all goods and services produced in the United States. What's interesting about that number, it's more than defense spending and non-defense. It's more than Social Security. It's more than all mandated programs together. I didn't put in, I've got tons of charts that show an arrow that looks like a ski slope going the other way that talks about how fast those costs are going up. For those of you who had the pleasure of reading the 28-page article by Steve Brill in Time magazine that talks about $10,000 bandages and all the abuses of the system, supposed abuses, the fact is the costs are very high and the costs are going up at a phenomenal rate. At the same time, while mortality rates, these arrows are not in proportion, mortality rates of hospital admissions have gone down a very small percentage. The cost of that have gone up thousands of percent. And so what's happening is we have this curve that's on the way up very quickly, and there's nothing that can stop it. And we as a society can't afford to pay for it. Something has got to give. And what all the conversation about it is what's going to give. There is some leveling out of that cost structure, but not fast enough. So everyone has their own explanation. One of the great things about this is if you ask people why healthcare costs too much, everybody's got a different story. You can hear the story about insurance companies make a fortune off of our ills. Physicians are clearly overpaid. Hospitals gouge their patrons. This whole thing about the charge master and how hospitals charge. Of course, if you looked at Bill's numbers carefully, we only collect about 50 to 60% of what we bill. Not covering people drives up costs. Covering people drives up costs. Medicare doesn't pay enough. Medicare pays too much. And of course, that I could do pages of that chart, including such things as the medical devices we buy in this country at wholesale that are made in Indiana, we can buy in Belgium at retail for half of what we pay at wholesale in this country. Or the fact that Medicare doesn't negotiate drug prices, or a whole lot of things like that. The fact of the matter is there are dozens of things that are driving up the cost of healthcare. And what everybody wants is a simple solution to a complex problem, and nothing like that exists. The truth is everybody's a little bit right and everybody's a little bit wrong. Some people aren't paid nearly enough for what they do, and some are probably paid too much. But the reality is it's a myriad of issues, and we're not going to have one simple solution that's going to fix the problem. We're also, by the way, our own worst enemies. This is a chart that I picked up from Dartmouth, but I happened to be at a debate about healthcare last week, and they had the same chart. The fact is 40% of all healthcare problems in this country are attributable to our own behavior. Smoking, sedentary lifestyle, and overweight are the killers, and they cause a whole series of diseases. And no matter who you listen to, is unless we can do something about changing those behavior patterns across a broad range of society, we are not going to lower health costs. By the way, 5% is attributable to physical environment, 15% to social circumstances, 10% to deficiencies in access, and the other 30% is roughly genetics or predisposition. But the fact of the matter is, we need to manage population health, not let populations do what they want and try to pay for that health. It just simply isn't going to work. The interesting thing is, most people that are in the business sort of get where it's going and understand the pattern, but the details are a little murky. For our planning purposes here, and we've been working probably for 3 to 4 years now, trying to pull together a strategy of how we respond to going forward. The details, while murky, there are some patterns here. The first is, nobody's going to pay us more for what we do than we're getting paid today. There are a few things that we might get paid more for, but in general, the payment for the services we provide is on a downward trend on a per-service basis. The fee-for-service charge, this is a piecework business, as you all know. You perform a service, you render a bill for that service, you take something off the shelf and whatever. That model of fee-for-service or piecework probably isn't going to disappear completely, but at some level there's going to be some form of population-based payment, first by Medicare, then by Medicaid, and ultimately by private insurers. And what that means, whether you call it capitation or population-based management or whatever, we're going to get $5,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 per life to manage 1,000 lives or 5,000 lives or 10,000 lives healthcare. And if we spend less than that, we're going to keep the difference. And if we spend more than that, we're going to end up paying the difference. How long it's going to take to get from here to there remains to be seen, but there are a series of national experiments like that that have been going on for half a dozen years, and it appears that it can be done and it can work, but it's going to have a huge impact on how we operate. Medicare is going to demand more every year and pay you less. That is the model. Those of us who are old enough and have the pleasure of being on Medicare understand the difference between what people bill and what actually gets paid. There is no percentage relationship. The numbers are too small. But the reality is Medicare is going to pay you less for everything you do, and they're going to demand more for that. The regulatory environment for rural America, that's us, is very uncertain. We are a critical access hospital, and that means that we get paid on certain costs rather than fee for service. Supposedly we're supposed to be 25 miles away from each other and meet a bunch of characteristics. The truth is there's a lot of hospitals that don't meet those characteristics, and we don't know whether that's going to continue. We don't know whether federally qualified healthcare centers like Amanuenseck are going to get a check from the government like they've gotten for many different years. And so all that's sort of iffy. We know that the number of people practicing medicine isn't going up proportional to the population. Medical schools were supposed to grow. The truth is, if you're a university president, medical schools lose money. They're complicated. They have lots of people in them. They have equipment and facilities. If you're a university president, what you want is another business school. All you need is a couple books and computers, and you can charge almost as much. And so the truth of the matter is we are not generating enough physicians and healthcare providers to serve the population, and there's a huge shortage, both in distribution of where they're located and total numbers of people. The cost of providing services is increasing. Each piece of equipment, they used to come at $50,000, then $100,000. Now they start at $1 million, plus you spend $1 million on the room you put them in. The fact is, equipment is more and more expensive for us, and that drives cost up. And finally, competition and transparency is becoming the new norm. At the debate I was at, the head of Geisinger, which is a huge health care delivery system in Pennsylvania, was there, and they've gone to flat pricing. Not on everything, but lots of things. You know, X for the colonoscopy, X for the knee replacement, so much to have the baby, flat fee. If it costs more, that's their problem. If it costs less, that's their benefit. We're going to see more and more of that, and we're going to see it available publicly so people can shop. And we all know that shopping, very much like people that go to kayak to shop for airfares, they are going to go to hospitals and shop for healthcare costs, and it's going to drive prices down. And in fact, we have It's coming up on our patient portal, but we're very close. You'll be able to put in the procedure you're looking for, the insurance you have, and we'll tell you what the average person pays for that. And multiple hospital and delivery systems like us are going to have the same thing, and that's going to drive our pricing down. So what do we need to do? There's no question spread your overheads over a wider base. I mean, the truth is building $100 million or building $110 million doesn't really cost a lot different. And so the bigger base of business you can drive your overhead costs, and that's billing and back office and IT and certain types of facilities and equipment utilization and all those kinds of things. And so there's a huge push on for people to work across the broader base of business. Some people talk about regionalization or expansion in various kinds of ways. And you're seeing that. The big mass providers around Boston have all crept up along the New Hampshire border. The New Hampshire guys are creeping down along the Mass border. People are expanding the nature and scope of that. We just don't have any more people. I mean, we have what we have here. And so for us, expansion means geographic expansion. And we are exploring ways to affiliate, amalgamate, partner, venture, somehow work with those people that we compete with today in order to rationalize our services. The truth of the matter is we don't need an MRI every 25 miles. We don't need a 64-cut CAT scan every 25 miles. We don't need a lot of things that we have. So if we have one that's 50% utilized and the next person has one that's 50% utilized, we would do a whole lot better if we had one that was 100% utilized. Of course, the devil of that is who's won, and those are all things that we're trying to rationalize and work through with other parties in the North Country. And finally, as you think about all those things, you say to yourself, well, how do we continue to preserve our service to the community? And the truth is, we can't be all things to all people all the time. There are limits to what we can do in the size and scope of our activities, and we're trying to decide where those limits are and how we reach those. Let me just say, people say all the time, we have great staff, right? I ran a business, and we have a great staff. We really do have a great staff. You can tell I'm not in Franconia all winter. I've been in South Franconia. I'm in Florida, and we have a hospital there in the community that I'm in. It's a small to mid-sized community. Last month, the average wait time in the emergency room from the time you arrived at emergency until you were admitted to the hospital, if you needed to be admitted, was 6 hours. The average wait time in the emergency room was over an hour. That is an emergency unto itself. And the reality is the level of service that people receive here, the quality of the care that they get, the caringness of the people, I hear it all the time, really is exceptional. And more importantly, I think our staff understands what's happening and how things are changing and is cooperative in that process as opposed to resistant, which is really part of the challenge of changing the way healthcare is being delivered. As Bill's pointed out and everybody's mentioned, we really are in a solid. We've been able to make money every year, not as much as we'd like, but enough. We are not heavily indebted. We have almost as much cash as we have debt. So we have a lot of flexibility to build and do the things we need to do. We have modern facilities. I happen to be here the day that some people from Dartmouth were here who are interested in pain management. And they were blown away by the quality of the facilities, the new infusion facilities, the access to a whole bunch of things we have here that other people just simply don't have. And so what we like to say, we think we know what we need to do, but the details are a work in progress. We think it's a good time for us. We think we'll do well in that, but there certainly are challenges we're going to continue to face. Warren?
So thank you, Steve, and thank you all of you for coming out to our 107th community meeting. That's a great number. We're very proud of that. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time. Steve set the stage about the environment that we're in. But the other challenge we have with the environment we're in is dealing with healthcare reform under the Affordable Care Act and all of the changes that are associated with that. And as we see it, and as I study the Affordable Care Act is intentionally designed to radically alter the system of healthcare that is in this nation. And so the 4 goals of the Affordable Care Act are access, right? 32 million Americans are going to get some kind of healthcare coverage. Cost, Steve talked about it. They want to drop or lower the cost curve and cut the cost curve and reduce the expenditure per capita in the nation. Affordability, they want to expand Medicaid. This state, however, is not doing that at this point, one of 24 in the country, one of 25 in the country. And they want to provide insurance subsidies under the exchange, which is happening here in the state, and we are part of that exchange. And finally, and probably most radical, is the concept of quality, clinical best practices, aligning rewards for quality, and changing from what Steve talked about, fee-for-service and volume-based reimbursement, to this value-based reimbursement methodology that we need to be prepared to overcome. So if you think about where we are today, we've got the old growth model of fee-for-service, and we're sitting right here in the middle of trying to transition from an old growth model to a new growth model. And quite frankly, as Steve has indicated, we can only read so many of the tea leaves. So we've got to start changing the course of this organization based on what we're going to anticipate is going to happen through the Accountable Care Organization, through the Affordable Care Act. What are the implications for healthcare reform? Steve hit a lot of these. Downward pressure on reimbursement. And that is going to dramatically affect who we are and how we operate. We're going to move from this value-based concept to volume-based to value-based. The federal government has deemed this as value-based purchasing. As Bill pointed out, 40% of our revenue comes from the federal government. They want to hold all of the providers, the hospitals and their physicians accountable for outcome, for patient satisfaction, and for quality. Because of the first 2 items, we've got to rebalance our cost structure is what they're saying. People are saying anywhere from 15 to 20% of your cost structure needs to go away if you're going to survive in this new universe. We need to figure out a plan to overcome that. Clearly, we've got challenges with primary care, recruiting. There's not enough primary care docs out there. We need to figure out how to meet that need in this community. Increased consumer responsibility, and that's why we're putting the estimator on our website. We need to be much more transparent with our pricing structure, because folks like us now are on high deductible plans. First dollar out of pocket is ours. We're going to start shopping around. The only way we can win that is have competitive pricing. The only way we can do that is get our cost structure down. Joint accountability for care and reimbursement via population health management. This is another radical feature of the Affordable Care Act. And basically it's saying, the federal government is saying to us, providers, you, Mr. Hospital, and you, physicians and mid-levels, and the insurance company are responsible for population health. Who's left out of the equation there? The individual patient. But we are still responsible for improving the health care of a region of population. And lastly, because of all these implications, what we're seeing in the market right now is major market consolidation. I don't think in the last 3 weeks that the headlines haven't started with another hospital has joined Dartmouth-Hitchcock. Whether it's New London, Alice Pacté, which just announced, Mount Scottney in Vermont. Shortly, Cheshire Medical Center will be announcing that. So more and more affiliations, mergers, and consolidations are going to be happening. What do we mean by this next curve, this second curve? So right now we're sort of paid, our primary focus is on sick care. Tomorrow or in the future, we got to focus on wellness and prevention, right? Care management. We manage it within our own setting. In the future, we've got to spend time on ongoing health and episodes of care, working with other partners, right? Right now, our delivery models is fragmented and siloed. We have our 4 walls. FQHC downtown Amanuense has their 4 walls. Home health does as well. We've got to learn to work together in a continuum of care and a coordination. Right care, right place, right time. So the walls have got to come down. In the care setting, so what do we do now? We see patients in the office, in the hospital. In the future, we're going to see them at home. We're going to deal with them through e-health. We're going to deal with them through m-health, mobile health. So there's going to be different vehicles, and how we make this transition is going to be critical. Our physician platforms, right? A bunch of solo practitioners. We have a group of physicians here at this institution. I wouldn't tell you today we have a group of practicing physicians. They're all sort of functioning independent. We need to tie them together better, a multi-specialty integrated group. We need to work on our clinical support systems, right? It's transactional now. It needs to be interoperable. We need to have a healthcare exchange among all of our partners in the region. Focused quality measures, they've got to be on outcome and population based, because that's how we're going to be reimbursed. Reimbursement, fee for service today. Tomorrow it is changing based on outcome, utilization, and total cost. That is a different world for us. Financial incentives. Today, as Steve said, we do more, we get paid more, right? Fee for service. That is going to be going away or fading out, and eventually it's going to be value-based. And then finally, right now we do more, perform better, we make more, right? That's what we have to do, is perform better. And finally, how do we make money now? It's on a margin per service. Soon it's going to be a margin per life, especially when we get to capitation. So I want to talk a little further about that. So this is a busy chart, but here's where we are now, fee for service. Steve mentioned that a lot of hospitals are experimenting, tertiary care facilities, large hospitals are experimenting with the shared savings. Many hospitals have succeeded, many have not. What is that? Well, the federal government are saying to Dartmouth-Hitchcock, you care for 50,000 lives. Last year it cost $1 million to take care of those 50,000 lives. If next year you're able to do it for 900,000, we'll split the difference with you and give you some shared savings back. So that's a model that we're going to be moving towards. Episode bundled payments, another model that we need to move towards. And the best example I can give you is Dr. Sauter. When he delivers a baby, he gets a bundled payment for all of the care that patient needs from the time they come to his office initially and say, yes, you're pregnant, to the time you go home with your baby. He gets one fixed fee for that. So more and more bundled payments are coming our way, whether it's for knee replacements, shoulder replacements, but they're going to group it. From the time you get to see the physician to the time you get discharged out of your rehab and back to the slopes, if that's what your goal is, we're going to get one fee for that, and it's going to be lower than what we get now. Global payments is another scheme they're working on, which will say, okay, Littleton Regional, you have 5,000 Medicaid lives right now. We're going to pay you X amount to take care of those lives for a year, which is really tricky if you don't have the systems to know what you're doing for those patients. And lastly, traditional capitation is going to come back, a per member per month fee that we will receive. The challenge that we face in this radical change in how we do things is the risk burden is going to be on us, the providers, to make sure we're able to succeed in these new models. But right now, we don't have the infrastructure, the expertise, the understanding of how we can do actuarials, how we can do claims management, how we can do big data to be able to understand how we can manage in this brave new world. And that's the challenge that we have to overcome. So what's coming? We've talked about lower payments. We've talked about this financial risk. Talked about the inability to shift cost. A number of hospitals, not us yet, are getting downgraded because the revenue stream's not there and they haven't gotten the costs down. And really, what is going to happen down the road is we've got to focus on size, scale, and systemness. We've got to develop a system in the North Country of healthcare different than what we have today. Success will require efficient operations. We've been working on that for years. Strong physician alignment. You saw the numbers. You saw what we're doing with our physicians. Effective clinical transformation, where and how and when care is provided. And finally, most importantly, we need to learn how to manage beyond our four walls of the hospital, which is what we do today. But tomorrow, it will be a different world, and we've got to figure out how to do that. So what are we doing? Our biggest challenge is to make sure we fulfill our mission. That's the goal of the board and administration, to make sure we fulfill the mission of Littleton Regional Healthcare. We've got to learn how to manage health of a regional population. And what population do we have? Upper Grafton and Coos County. What population in the state is the least healthiest? Oh, I'm sorry. Upper Grafton and Coos County. So that will be a real challenge, but we have to learn how to get people healthier. Keep them out of the hospital, keep them out of the ED, keep them out of our physician offices. That's the game in the future. So we got to build scale in the North Country in a unified system. We got to make sure we have a sustainable healthcare system in the North Country to service our patient population. Our patient population isn't growing, but we've got to figure out how we work together to get them all healthier. And finally, we got to do some regional planning to address changes in the environment. The solution we're working on is that we cannot do this alone. We cannot sit in our four walls and master the brave new world that's coming our way. We must partner with our friends in the North Country, the hospitals, the FQHCs, the home health agencies, the nursing homes, the private physicians. We must reinvent healthcare in the North Country as we know it today. I don't think any of us would recreate the system we have in the North Country as a health system. We'd say it's not working. We'd say we have 4 hospitals that are competing with a stagnant population. We'd say we have 3 FQHCs that are sort of competing and collaborating, if you will, with the hospitals. We've got nursing homes, we've got private practitioners. We need to redefine how we do our work. And finally, because of the challenges with risk and taking on risk with the new payment mechanisms, we've got to partner down the road with the tertiary care facility who has practiced in ACO, Accountable Care Organization pilot programs and have succeeded because they'll have the big data, they'll have the information we need, they'll have the experience. So the board has authorized me to work first with the 3 hospitals in the North Country to figure out if we can come up with a new organizational structure where we can systemize healthcare in the North Country, where we can rationalize healthcare in the North Country. After we get successful in that, we need to expand the tent with the FQHCs, home health care, and the nursing homes so we're all in this game together, taking on risk together and taking on a continuum of care throughout the North Country, and join some kind of tertiary care facility that would be a potential Dartmouth or some other large teaching institution that is practiced and good at what they do with regard to ACOs, Accountable Care Organizations. In summary, change is required. Healthcare continues to evolve. I've been in this business for 30 years. Change has been a constant for all 30 years. But what I will tell you is change will be much more rapid in the next 3 to 5 years. Bigger is better. Size and scale will matter in the future, and that's why we need to work with our friends in the North Country. We have a chance to reinvent healthcare in the North Country, make it right for everybody. Change won't be easy. There'll be some very difficult decisions we need to make as we try to survive in this brave new world. But I think the good news is, as we reinvent healthcare, we can focus on our patients and their health and improve the population health of everybody in the North Country, which will be our goal as we move forward. So bear with us, help us, and be patient with us as we try to reinvent healthcare in the North Country, as we try to read the tea leaves that aren't quite defined yet from Washington, as we try to continue to meet our mission and meet all of your healthcare needs. We have been on the right track, as Bill and Steve have both said. We just need to continue to move down that track so we don't get run over, and we won't. So I want to thank you tonight. I want to say it is an absolute privilege every day to come to work and support and serve all of the family at LRH. And it is an honor to be here as a healthcare provider and take care of the lives who entrust us with their care. Have a great night, and thank you for coming out.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Wiggett, one of the nurses here at Littleton Regional Healthcare, both in the oncology and infusion area, and I will be taking you on a tour of our new facility that we moved into in June of this past year. This is Littleton Regional Healthcare's oncology and infusion suite. Right now we're standing in one of the waiting areas. This one is designed for patients that are coming in to see the physicians. We have Dartmouth Hitchcock physicians that come here twice a week to provide coverage, and they are available 5 days a week for us to talk to, and we have the whole Dartmouth Hitchcock family to use if we need to. After they've been checked in by our receptionist, they come down, and somewhere we have a light. We have 2 exam rooms so the doctors can do their examination and have their discussion. And we have a second one down the hallway if needed. And on the other side of the waiting room is the second waiting room. This is basically designed for patients that are coming into the outpatient treatment area, which is what we're standing in now. You're looking at the nurses' station. And then kind of behind us on the outside wall are our areas for treating patients. We have 5 different sections with 2 chairs in each. So we can have up to 10 patients sitting here getting infusions. Or if there aren't completely filled with patients, then we have visitors and family members that can sit with their patient. Each chair has its own TV. These are all nice, comfortable, rocking, reclining chairs. And we also put them on swivels so that we can turn them around and people can actually just look out the window instead of staring at us if they'd like to. Give them a little change of scenery. Down this other end, we put in one room, give some light here. So that we have one area that has a bed for people that are not feeling well and want a little bit of privacy, or if we're doing a procedure where we require the privacy for the patient while that is occurring. And basically makes a loop around the other exam room over here in the hallway. And we put in 2 bathrooms for the patients to use. There's one at this end, one at the other end. And we also had 2 nutrition areas installed so that there's food, drink, microwaves available. And if they happen to be here during mealtime getting their infusion and are hungry, we have our wonderful dietary department provide them with a meal. And we also built a medication administration area. And I don't know what else. Computer station here, so if patients want to access different sites for education, they can, because some of our patients obviously don't have information at home, and then books and magazines and things that they can either take or borrow depending on what we have in stock, because education's a very big part of what we do in here.